You want to find a niche that not a lot of people are targeting. And that niche doesn't have to be big initially. Mm-hmm. The whole idea is that it's so noisy in the world of business and in the market that you're in, is you have to be able to stand out somehow.
Welcome to Built Online. I'm Cody McGuffie, and this podcast is all about one thing: building the business of your dreams. Selling art, teaching classes, starting a blog, launching a brand, whatever your passion is, we show you how to turn it into real income. I created EverBee to help anyone with a dream start and scale business.
EverBee.
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 We now serve over 800,000 creators all across the globe. On this show, we bring on real entrepreneurs who've done it. They share their secrets, they share their failures, the exact steps that you can take to get started. What if you can get one golden nugget out of today's episode, and it's the breakthrough that takes you from just dreaming to actually living a life on your terms? At EverBee, we believe that every human is a creator, and every creator should own a business. Sean, we're here.
What's up, man?
What's up, man? How are you?
Good to see ya. It's been a minute.
I know, man. How long's it been?
I think like 6 months or so, hey? Since the Hampton retreat.
Yeah, we did a retreat. For anyone is listening or watching this, met Sean at a retreat, like an entrepreneurship executive or CEO retreat. What would you call that thing? Like founder retreat?
Founder retreat, entrepreneur retreat, very high growth, selective group of folks that are ambitious, doing cool shit.
It was cool. And it was here in Austin. And if I recall, the first time, we haven't talked about this, the first time we saw each other was in the elevator, I think it was, right?
Yeah, when we first getting in. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember your energy was just like friendly and warm.
It's good.
When we got into that elevator.
Very Canadian vibe.
What was it?
Was it a very, very Canadian vibe?
I guess I don't have much experience with Canadian vibes.
Yeah, we're known to be pretty nice.
I remember being like, he's a genuine great human.
Oh, I appreciate it.
And at that point, I didn't even know that you were part of the retreat. It was cool.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a woman helping us take our luggage, show us to our room or something like that, right? And we happened to be in the same, and you were just so kind to her. I remember that. And I remember being like, okay.
Yeah, no, they were super nice. Yeah.
Crazy, man. I'm really excited that you're here. So thank you for flying in from Brazil to come and do this podcast.
Just for this podcast, brother. we gotta pump in as well, and feeling pretty energized.
Yeah,
we're ready to provide some value for your audience.
Super cool, man. We have a really cool audience, listenership, who are, I've talked to you about the people that listen to this podcast, high growth minded people. They want to grow, they want to learn, they're building businesses, they're creating audiences, they're creating podcasts, they're creating physical product businesses, digital product businesses, they're creating content, they're doing things, and they want to create a better life for themselves and their families. Specifically, the thing that they're searching for and they're chasing down is freedom. I don't know if they would describe it this way, but the way I describe it is the 3 freedoms of time freedom, financial freedom, and location freedom. That's what they want most of the time when they're listening to this. We all have different definitions of that. But I'm curious, how do you define freedom in your life?
Yeah. So for me, people have different values of what they are looking for, whether it's growth, contribution, freedom, materialistic things. Sometimes it's lust, right? Some people are fantasizing about finding the right partner. For me, freedom is definitely the highest order value, and you can kind of see based on my lifestyle. I've lived traveling and being a digital nomad for the last 10 years of my life, and freedom comes in all different aspects. For sure, I think the biggest is like being able to separate the time from the amount of money that you make. I think that's probably the biggest part, because you can only work so many hours in a day. And this is, let's say a doctor or a lawyer can charge $300, $400 an hour, but they can still only work 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day or 12 hours a day. And the moment that they are feeling sick, or that the moment that they're not feeling well and they can't actually trade time for money, they're out of business. They don't have the ability to make money. So that's really a big part of that. And being able to sell online and sell products online, that's really a big part of that. Physical freedom is another big one for me. So the fact that I can
time freedom. I mean, is that location freedom for you?
Yep. For me, it's the ability to work anywhere that I want, the ability to reach an audience that's global as well. So for me, I can be in Brazil, I can be here chatting with you, where we're going to get in a good work session after this as well. And being able to do that from anywhere is probably the biggest one as well. And emotional freedom, the ability to be free and to be able to be childlike, to be able to talk about what I want, to not feel censored, to be able to share my thoughts, not care about what anyone thinks. I think that those are the three aspects for me of what I call freedom, is you have to be freedom in all aspects, not just financial freedom.
Would you say that, and to what degree does financial freedom buy the other freedoms?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think financial freedom is a big part of it, for sure. The problem with relying on just financial freedom, though, is you have a lot of people that, let's say, I don't want to single these people out, but let's say investment bankers or people that work in physical locations that are making a lot of financial freedom, but what happens is they are trying to keep up with the Joneses and they're trying to get the next car, they're trying to get the next house or the next version of this technology, and their expenses get so high and they're not really free. Like I look at even some of my friends or family members that are making a lot of money. So on paper, they're really rich, but their expenses are so high where they're not able to travel because they still have to work. They feel like they're tied down to their jobs and they have to continue working more hours. And because of that, they're not emotionally free either. They're not spiritually free. So is that really freedom?
Yeah.
I don't feel like that is.
I don't think so either. It's like the salesperson who's always chasing the next deal, right? Like as soon as he stops, it stops.
Yeah.
Like the money flow kind of stops. And maybe he can live off of it for maybe another 12 months, but eventually it stops.
Yeah.
And I think about it like with, sales is probably the best thing, or the real estate agent, right? There's probably real estate agents, like so many of them. I have family members that are real estate agents, and you're only as good as your next deal. Whereas the freedom that we're talking about here is, it doesn't stop. It doesn't have to stop. It's a significant amount. Typically, it's usually like you're chasing a bigger number, but also you have this freedom component of, I'm building things that will make money while I'm sleeping. So I don't feel like it always takes my energy or my time to make that dollar.
Yes.
And that's the businesses that you've built historically.
Yeah. And it's really anyone that is currently trading time for money. I think they're in a position where if they get sick, or if they're not able to come in and they're not able to trade their time for money, they're not able to make money. That's the end of it, right? If they can't have the ability to make money when they're sleeping, to me, at this point, they're not free because they're still reliant. It's still reliant on them to be showing up at the office or making those calls to be able to earn money and provide a living for their family.
Take me back to where it began now. You live this free life from my perspective, who a lot of people are inspired by and aspire to get to this point. You were raised in South Korea and then Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you take us back to the beginning and kind of like maybe the elevator pitch of your history?
Damn, yeah, we'll go way back. So born in Seoul, South Korea. And when I was 7, Korea was going through a recession at that time. So the IMF was involved, International Monetary Fund, to try to save Korea. And my dad lost his job. So we had to fly all the way to Canada. We decided to go there because my uncle was living there. So we're there. I didn't know a word of English. None of my parents knew a word of English.
No way.
We just decided to completely start a new chapter in our lives. And, I don't know how far you want me to go back with kind of how this relates to entrepreneurship, but, when I first got to university in McGill, you had to speak French to get a job. So this is actually when I first started to kind of play around with entrepreneurship. So what I first started to do, I had this company called Totem Pass, and obviously we were in college, so we were all trying to save money. So it was a discount card. I think you guys have a version of this called like SPC or something like that.
Okay.
So it's a physical card that I started to hand out, and I handed out maybe 20, 30,000 of these. And you could get discounts on places like Subway, Dairy Queen, Quiznos.
Like coupon books, or not even coupon books. They were books though. I remember like.
Yes,
yeah, totally.
Exactly. So then I would go to every restaurant and say, hey, I've got like 10, 20,000 of these cards handed out across the school and McGill with the university that I went to. Can you provide some sort of a discount? And then I would be able to get some sort of a monthly fee for promoting them. So this is kind of how I started to like hustle, and I would start getting like these mini checks here and there, $50 here and there. And I just got this entrepreneurship bug. And a lot of it was out of necessity because I wasn't able to get a job because I didn't speak French at the city that I lived in. And then this evolved into trying to create an app and trying to compete with Groupon for that. And it just kind of evolved from there. So I think I've always had this entrepreneurship bug, which is not the coolest thing when you're coming from a Korean family. Because I don't know if you know that saying, if you're an Asian family member,
a lawyer, or doctor.
You're either a doctor or lawyer or a failure. And I was neither of those. And I actually ended up dropping out of university on my last year because I got into this entrepreneurship program. It was called the Next 36. And they basically select 36 of the kind of the top students across Canada. And it's kind of like do you know the Thiel Fellowship Program?
Yeah.
What Peter Thiel, for people that don't know, it's a program that Peter Thiel started where he would provide funding to make students drop out to start a business because he didn't really believe in the traditional education system. So this is a similar program done for Canadians. There was pretty top people involved, like the former CEO of Facebook Canada, Goldman Sachs, and so forth, to kind of bring in this new era of entrepreneurs. And luckily, I was able to get selected, and I started. We started building this company. And funny enough, the entrepreneurship program it was supposed to be a reality show.
No way.
Because it was so dramatic, filled with this egoistic folks that were top of their class. And what they did is they randomly matched us to become co-founders. So the moment that we got selected through this competitive process, they just put randomly 3 people together, and they said, okay, you guys are not co-founders. Pretty much a marriage, as you know, like legally binded.
Totally.
You have to think of an idea, and you're going to start a company over the next 6 months together, living together.
Interesting to watch if you're younger. Yeah.
It is, right?
Probably enjoy that. Actually, if you're as an adult too, you're like, yeah, I wonder personality, because you just know it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Yeah. So it's funny. Within the first like 2 months, half of the businesses failed, all because of co-founder fights. So then people would start joining into other groups and stuff. So in the end, our business also failed. And within the first 6 months, I dropped out of university. I had my business fail, and I couldn't tell my parents that I dropped out. So I went through really conundrum. Ended up doing this 10-day silent meditation retreat in Hawaii, where I had these.
What retreat was it?
Vipassana.
Okay, I haven't heard of it. Okay,
I haven't heard of it. Yeah, it's a 10-day silent meditation retreat where you can't have your laptop, any technology. You can't speak to anyone. You can't look at anyone. You can't touch anyone. You're eating like once or twice a day, and you're meditating for 10 hours a day out in the rainforest in Hawaii. So I slept in like a little tent. And
sounds spooky almost. Like it sounds very challenging to do.
It was the hardest thing I've had to do at that time because I was such an extrovert. So imagine just being with your own thoughts for 10 days silently in your own little world.
Could you talk out into the abyss?
No.
You're not supposed to?
No, because you're going to distract other people as well. So within the first day, I think 30% of the people left. Like we came back from the meditation, those people left. We would hear people like grown-ass adults crying at 2 a.m. because these people were going through such an emotional experience.
How did you want to do that? I'm curious. Like, how did you even get attracted to something like that, especially at a young age?
Yeah. I was 20, 21 at that time. So a friend of mine actually did it, and she had a drinking problem. And she just told me about how much it's changed her life. She was also similarly like an extrovert like myself. She stopped drinking after that. She kind of went through this spiritual path and kind of found herself. She started to really focus on her business. So I was like, damn, like I want some of that, you know?
So you were kind of just searching for meaning maybe at that time, or searching for clarity?
I was lost.
With your life.
I was completely lost, yeah. Because imagine like I left all my friends. So I moved to a new city. I was supposed to be this entrepreneur that, you know, all my friends
Dropped
thought.
out of school, you're gonna like,
you know,
be that next.
And back in the day, like you drop out of school and it's kind of like, oh, you're like the next Zuckerberg, right? Like the Canadian. So I'm like, shit, there was like a lot of pressure on me to perform. I got into this program, and imagine like all my friends, all my parents, they think I'm doing this big thing, and then little do they know I'm like a failure. You know, in my mind at that time, our business failed. I felt lonely, didn't know what I wanted to do. I was broke. Like all the things that could go wrong was going wrong, and I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't tell my mom that I dropped out of school. I couldn't tell my friends that my business failed. And I just kind of had this pressure of trying to keep up an appearance that I was this successful little kid, yet in the inside, and what was actually happening was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
And I just didn't really have anyone else to go to. So that's really where things started to break down for me, and I needed to search for something that would just allow me to find some clarity in terms of the things that I wanted to do.
Fast forward through that, did you end up getting the clarity that you needed?
I did. And the clarity that I was trying to find was whether I was going to go back to university and go follow this traditional path of the education system and get a job, or to do something wild, which is kind of what was calling me. And I ended up actually booking a one-way ticket to South America.
Where in South America?
So I had to go to Peru because I couldn't afford a ticket to go from Toronto at that time to Argentina. And I ended up going to Peru first. But actually, the reason why I did all this stuff, by the way, was I forgot one step that I'll just mention for people to know, is I ended up getting a job at this company called Handy initially, right after I dropped out. Because that's what I thought I wanted to do, was join a startup. Got the job. I was their first product manager, and I booked a ticket. I paid for all my immigration lawyer, all that stuff, because I couldn't afford it at that time. Packed up all of my bags, took a bus, fucking Greyhound bus, from Toronto to New York. It was like 1 a.m. at that time, and I had my little suit on, and they rejected my visa at that time. That was really tough.
Devastating.
Because I had my apartment rented in New York. I put all my savings into the immigration lawyer, knowing that I would get a pretty decent job. And here I am at 3 a.m. at this time, getting my fingerprint scanned. They took a photo of me back in the immigration office, almost like treating me as if like I'm a prisoner, you know? And I was scared, right? So
You're 22 at this time, right?
21. Didn't know what to do. The whole point was that I would get the stable job and then be able to tell my friends and family that, you know, at least I'm now doing good. I'm living in New York, have a good job. Couldn't even get that. So they put me in a police car, drove me from upstate New York all the way up to Toronto, the border there. And I had to figure out my own way to get a Greyhound bus back. Didn't know what I was going to do at this time because I didn't have any money. So I ended up checking into a hostel for the first week and just lived pretty much in a hostel for 7 days. Didn't know what the hell I was going to do, and was trying to brainstorm. At one point I was going to buy a bunch of stuff from Groupon and then resell it, like just desperation stuff,
yeah,
right?
Trying to figure out, how do you make ends meet? How do you survive?
Just survive.
Yeah.
Just survive. Had an old friend of mine that I knew from elementary that I figured out that was living in Toronto at that time, and slept on his couch for like a month and a half. So through all of this, after that is when I did the silent meditation retreat. So from there, I decided to book a one-way ticket to Peru. because I couldn't afford a ticket to go all the way to Argentina. I had like $700 in my name. And I took a 72-hour bus ride from Peru to Argentina because that was the cheapest route that I could go. And it's this super dangerous path that you have to go through Chile. It's like one of the most dangerous paths, but it's so cheap. I was like, boom, let's do it. So that's what happened, man. I landed in Argentina, had $700, and I don't know how much you knew about before Meli came in. They had the differences of currency. So they had like an official peso market, and then for people to trade that from dollars to pesos in the official market, if you go to the bank, it was like $1 was 8 Argentinian pesos at that time, which is crazy because now it's like 150 or something like that. But if you took the physical cash of the dollars that you had and you went into the streets, there's people that you'll see on the street corners that are selling like cambio, cambio. And you take that physical cash, because for them, think about it, like the way we treat gold is the way they treat US dollars because their inflations are so high. So from there, you would kind of go into this little alleyway and you would go into a room and you would trade your physical US dollars into Argentinian pesos.
Wow. And
And if you did that, you can double your money. So I literally went from having $700, I took all of the cash that I had, and I turned it into 1,400 or 1,500 at that time.
in Argentina.
In Argentinian pesos, which is all I needed, right? To pay for my food, for my rent. So I pretty much like went from having a month of rent, and then I was just going to go fly back to Toronto using a credit card. And then I turned that into like 2 and 3 months just from that experience. I didn't even know at that time that
First
you
time
could
you
do
ever
that.
double your money.
Yeah. I had a dictionary. I was trying to like negotiate using like Spanish words that I never learned.
That's right, because you didn't speak Spanish.
Didn't speak a word of Spanish at that
Interesting.
time. Yeah.
Okay. And does this all lead to where you are today when it comes to the language? Because you've built a couple companies now, and I want to kind of jump forward just a little bit.
Yeah.
You built 2 companies all around language.
Yes.
Was that inspired because of this barrier that you had by going from just other countries to other countries to other countries without having this language thing? Can you talk about that?
100%. Yeah. So when I first got into Argentina at that time, this is 2014, the 2 methods of learning a language at that time was either you go through an immersion program, like going through a school, or going to have a private tutor that you hire, or you have to meet in person and all that stuff, or you use YouTube or a free app like Duolingo.
And was YouTube even a thing back in 20?
You have some videos here and there, but it just wasn't the quality of the content that you have today. And there's 2 extremes that we saw there, which was, one, you have to pay for this incredibly expensive program where you have to go in physically. So talk about freedom, right? Like you have to really go in physically, show up, schedule it.
Totally.
High cost. Then you have this free solution, which is good from a cost perspective, but you're kind of learning these useless words and words that aren't really going to help you. You would learn things like, a cat is stuck in a tree. But what I really wanted to do was, flirt with girls. I wanted to order stuff at the restaurant. I wanted to negotiate. There was a bit of a disconnect there. Mm-hmm. So the idea of the first company, Ripe, was to be able to connect teachers online and students where they can have the physical freedom. They can learn and take classes online at a much more cheaper cost and have an immersive learning experience where they're actually speaking, but it's also affordable and accessible. So that's really where the idea that came from. And the way it started was I just started connecting like my teacher in Argentina, like my actual teacher in Argentina that I had. And then I had a teacher in Colombia that I used as well when I lived there. And those were the first 2 people on the platform. And I just called up my friends in New York or Toronto and said, hey, like you wanted to learn Spanish, right? And it just would connect them. There was no product built. I used Calendly at that time when it first came out. I think we were like one of the early users of that. Put together a WordPress website and just started calling and emailing people. And I think we got to like $5,000 a month of revenue just doing that.
Super inspiring. I want to pause on that for a second because that's so inspiring. And this is how businesses are built. Like we think about businesses and like after they're already successful. But these are the early stages of like, if anyone listening to this is starting a business, this is how it starts. You have to do things that don't scale first. you have to connect a friend to your teacher.
Mm.
And like you have to be you have to pretend like you're the website in between.
Yes.
And then if it works, if it proves like, oh wow, they traded value, and like, oh look, there's a 10%, 20%, 30% margin. Oh, got it. Now I'll throw a website in between.
Yep.
And how do we automate this? Okay, how do I connect 2 more people, get 2 more tutors on it? Very similar before I launched EverBee years ago. Very similar. I was playing with multiple tech products at this stage, and one of the projects that I had, call them projects because they weren't companies yet.
Yeah.
Was called Handy Run, and it doesn't exist, by the way, if anybody wants to look it up. It might, like the Facebook group or the Facebook thing might show up, but it was literally like Uber for construction workers. So picture yourself, or let's say if you're a general contractor and you're like redoing a house and you have a project, you all of a sudden realize you're like, oh, I need this pipe fitting. Oh, I really need this tool. Oh, I really need this part. And you'd have to literally send a person from your job who you pay $15 an hour to in US, send them to Home Depot or a supply house. Yeah. Go and do that. It takes 3 hours of time or 2 hours of time or whatever it is. And he has to come back and then you finally get the part. But it's actually a problem, right? So I identified that as a problem. And so I'm like, cool, that's a problem.
Were you doing construction before? Like, did you work in a construction job?
No. Yeah, I grew up in blue collar construction. Yeah. My family was always like in construction and into blue collar work for sure. Yeah. So I was very familiar with.
So you knew the problem. Yeah.
I was that runner.
Yeah.
I was that, they call him a runner. And I would go and run to the store and get this stuff. So, and then when I started flipping houses, I recognized that I'm like, dude, we had a crew of 5 people here, but now he's always running. And so my point is with this is, I'm like, there's a potential business here. Uber for this service, and there'd be a runner would always be getting like handyman stuff, right? Doing stuff like this. I didn't have a website. I literally just posted something on Craigslist. I will go get your parts for you. And so I started building relationships with regular people, sometimes for their home projects, and also relationships with general contractors or, foremans.
Yes.
And I'd be like, dude, when you need something, when you're on a job, call me. There was no website. There was no fancy like marketplace type of model yet. There was no map and the fancy map. There was like, dude, just call me. Here's my number. And they were starting to call. And I eventually got this call from this person who was redoing their garage, and they're doing like installation, and it was an $800 order. Oof. It was like $800 GMV, right? Gross value versus volume merchandise or whatever.
Gross market, yes.
Whatever it is. I'm like, dude, let's go. Didn't even have a truck at the time. Borrow my stepdad or my father-in-law's truck. Yeah. Go to Home Depot, get all this stuff, deliver it to her house literally in the middle of the night, pretty much. And dude, I made money. Like there was a margin there. It was like a $50 profit margin, right? It wasn't a lot on that GMV, but
that first dollar, I'm sure you're like, yo, let's go.
Who cares? Yeah. And then, by the way, my phone died in the middle of that thing. Yeah. So I ended up having to buy a charger for like way markup at Home Depot for like $25 for my phone charger. That ate into my margin. But the point is like, oh, this could scale if I just like started putting the technology in between. So yes. I wanted to pause there for a second because this is how it works. You build stuff that doesn't scale first. You do stuff that doesn't scale, and then you eventually do things that scale. Yep,
100%. Yeah, I would, if I had to restart, like with everything that I know, that's probably what I would do again. You know what I mean? Like, I think the first step for people if you're in a position where you're trading your time for money, the next level up from that is to be the facilitator of the people that are trading time for money. Right? So what I became was, instead of being the language teacher myself, which I would be horrible, right? Which I didn't really know much about, right? The business that I was in was not in the language. The business that I was in was to connect people and to have a distribution platform that allows people to connect. That's the business that I was in. And instead of trading time for money, I was allowing people to connect, and my teachers were trading time for money, and I was the facilitator of that. And that's really one of the easiest things that you can build actually, because you don't need a lot of technology for that when you're the facilitator. And for me at that time when I didn't have any money, the whole business cost like less than $100, dude. Like WordPress, Calendly, I was paying $5, $10 a month for that, and my time. I spent a little bit of money on Facebook ads to get the initial customers, but that was it. And if I didn't have any money and I didn't have any network, I was starting in Argentina. So like, this isn't even like for people that are listening outside of the US and they're living in India or the Philippines, wherever it might be. Like I wasn't living in the US either. I wasn't living in Canada at the time.
You don't have to anymore.
You don't have to.
This was 10 years ago, right?
This is 10 years ago, yeah.
So Ripe still exists.
Ripe still exists. It's under JumpSpeak. So we kind of integrated it as part of the platform for people that want to learn and take live tutoring.
With live tutoring.
Yeah.
So can we talk about JumpSpeak? And then we could jump around a little bit too.
Yeah.
But JumpSpeak is your baby.
That's the flagship product right now.
That's your flagship product right now.
Yeah.
And you're the CEO, you're the founder of JumpSpeak. What is that? Okay. Can we talk about JumpSpeak?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So how did it start and how many years ago?
Dude, same situation, right? Like we talk about how we try to validate the product and we try to launch the product ideally without, try to get customers without launching the product. That's basically what we did. So we had a video that we made in my apartment in Mexico City. We were filming some videos and I hired a production crew, maybe spent like $150 for that day. I wrote the script myself. It's a video that's still up on our website right now. People can go watch it. And JumpSpeak.com. And it was this comical video that's similar to like a Dollar Shave Club video that went viral back in the day. And we spent like a day just filming that and took that same video. We launched a Kickstarter campaign made with Kickstarter and Indiegogo. We made about $100,000 from that. Didn't have a single product. All I wanted to do was validate whether this is a problem that exists and get initial set of customers without spending any money to see if this is something worth building and to get feedback on the customers as we build it. So that's what we did. That
How
actually,
many years ago was this?
This was 5 years ago.
Okay. So
Yeah.
a good amount of time, but also very young. Like
Pretty young.
This is a kindergartner.
Yeah. Because we didn't have, like, we bootstrapped completely. So we didn't have money to like pour back into building JumpSpeak, right? So I wanted to see like if we can just get a separate set of funds to be able to just build this separately.
And when you do Kickstarter, I'm not super familiar. I've backed a couple Kickstarter things back in the day when I was in college. It was just fun to like throw $5 or even $50.
Sure, yeah.
Which seemed like a lot, and it was cool at the time. But do you trade any equity, or do you have any promises that you have to like keep to these backers, or I forget what they're called?
Yeah, so I think to the platform with Kickstarter or Indiegogo, you give 10% or 15% or something like that. For the backers, it's really just to support the projects. So most projects actually on Kickstarter go out of business. So when customers, for us, especially an app is not very popular to do, most people launch physical products or mostly physical products like bags or shirts or technology, hardware stuff. So even backing a software product was not a popular thing to do back in the day. I think we were like one of the top software products that we launched on the platform because it's so rare. And people are surprised. Like, I'm surprised that you guys actually
still here.
Ended up launching and, have
they're kind of throwing that money away. They're kind of just
pretty
saying,
much.
Like, yeah, $5, it makes me feel good at night knowing that like I backed an aspiring entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Or I'm futuristic thinking, so like I'll back them. That's kind of the idea.
Totally. Dude, we still have customers. I think like 3 months ago, I had a customer email me and say like, dude, I totally forgot that I backed this. Are you guys live?
No way.
I was like, yeah, like here's the link, here's the code.
Dude,
it's so funny.
When I was in college, I backed, and I felt so proud of this too. I remember telling like somebody I backed this. It was a ring. It was like a ring where you can text with your hand. That was the concept, at least, right? Where it's like I would wear this ring and I can like write what I want to say. Back. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but
on your phone, like it connects to your phone or something.
It must have connected with my phone, yeah, at the time. And this was probably 10 years ago, I guess. Yeah, 10 or 11 years ago. they're definitely not in business anymore. I'm pretty sure they're not in business. I don't even remember what it's called. But I remember it was like $5 or $10, and I remember bragging about it to somebody. I'm like, oh yeah, I backed that. You know?
Yeah. And it's a community thing for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get a bunch of backers for like 150,000.
I think it ended up being like 110,000, something like
Insane,
that
right?
total.
It's a good amount of money.
It's a good amount of money.
When you're in Argentina at the time.
Yeah, I was in Mexico City at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, but still, same
So
thing.
you're in business at this point.
We're in business now, but there's a little bit of pressure now.
Sure.
Right?
What's the pressure coming from, you think?
Well, we have backers now. We have people that I feel responsible for, people that put real money in, that want a product that's good. You know, they backed it for a reason. Especially for a software product, it's not very popular. Like for a physical product, you can have pictures. People really, they can see the tangible good of it.
Yeah.
How do you really display software on a video without having them actually, you know, touch it, feel it, play around with it? Really, they're backing the concept. So I felt a lot of pressure just to be able to deliver that. So yeah, we got to work pretty much from there.
How long did it take for you to build the first version?
It took about a year after that. It took about a year.
When did you expect it to be built? Like how long did you expect? And
Dude, I expected it to be built like in 3 months.
yeah, totally.
Because it was really the first, I would say it's like the real like software that I actually built from scratch.
Gotcha. I mean, like custom code,
like everything. Like I had to think about all the design. I designed the whole app. So I really dug into it, and it just, as you know, it just one obstacle after another. So it took a lot of work.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that too, because a lot of people listening to this, they're not super familiar with like how software works. And there's a million ways you can go with this stuff, but really there's two categories in my mind, and it's more like you can start with like the low code or the no code software nowadays. Like Bubble is a popular one. Sure. Great for something if you want to like get something off the ground. You can kind of like, you still have to be fairly technical to kind of get it to work, but you can get up and running pretty quickly. But you're always gonna be limited on what you can do because it's not your code. Yeah. And then you'll have like custom code, which is kind of what you're talking about here. Is like, it is your creation, your vision. You literally have to build everything from scratch. Yep. And same thing with EverBee. It was everything's custom, right? So there wasn't like, there's maybe ways you can kind of like hack together parts of what we do with a no code or low code solution, but like what the vision was not possible to do with no code or low code. Yeah. So you have to build it custom, and it always takes longer to build things custom. Yes. Custom house, custom car, custom boots, like it's always gonna take longer. Yes. This is my whole thing about like people are so afraid of that with AI coming in that is just going to disrupt every single product that's out there. The reality is like it'll knock out a lot of the B players, people that are not building great software and that are not building great products, because it's becomes this commoditized thing, just like, you know, no code, Bubble, all these platforms did. But to be able to compete with someone that is putting their heart, energy, their taste, their style from the ground up and working on it every single day, like that is still going to rise above any sort of AI-based code that's going to be built out, right? So I believe that, and I think that's still going to be the case, where the A players will still continue to rise, and that will be differentiated constantly, and you'll have a lot of B players that are just going to get knocked out. Totally, which makes it probably better for the market anyway, probably, right? Because the best product should win. Yeah, and they'll win big. They'll continue to win big. Yep, I agree with this. I want to talk about JumpSpeak, about like what it does first, so everyone can kind of have context. Yeah, and then also jump in maybe to the business side of things. Of like, we talked a little bit about the business, but maybe kind of two separate compartmentalized conversations on that. So what is JumpSpeak? What's the main thing it does? Yeah, so JumpSpeak is what Ripe was supposed to be doing. We know from the immersion focused aspect, but it's in an app form. So it allows it to be even more accessible, even more affordable for the mass, where we bring immersion focused language learning in your pocket. Beautiful. So what would you compare it to? So is there a comparison like on the market that's useful for someone if they haven't heard of JumpSpeak? Yeah, it's
Hard to compare because I think when most people think about learning through an app, they think about Duolingo, which is the free version of it. And it's a great app for people that are starting. It's a gamified version. You learn the basic vocabulary, basic grammar, but it's not going to get you to be conversation fluent. It's not going to get you to that level after you reach a certain level of basics. So the way I think about it is like it's Duolingo and a human tutor combined.
Oh, cool.
And that's really what we bring in terms of an experience for you.
So if is it built for somebody like me, for example, who I speak one language, English, and I've learned Spanish because I grew up in San Diego, California. I've learned like that a little bit, and I can have a conversation probably in Spanish. Not a very good one, but I could definitely work my way around Mexico.
Okay.
Guaranteed.
Hablas español.
And is that for me? If I wanted to like improve my Spanish and if I wanted to also maybe pick up another language, or is this too advanced for me?
Yeah, so if you already have the basics for Spanish, you're like the perfect customer for that, right? You'll still want to complement it perhaps with learning some grammar, some vocabulary, because the kind of the sweet spot of what we provide is to help you feel more confident in real life situations. So you're role playing different scenarios that you would encounter if you were in Mexico, if you were in Spain, ordering coffee at a restaurant, at the beach, at the Uber.
Cool.
And you're simulating those situations just
real
like
life.
Real life. If you're trying to be a pilot, you don't just go into a plane right away. The way you actually become a pilot is you go into a simulation room, you practice exactly what it's going to be like. And that way, when you're actually in the real life situation, you're able to mentally, compartmentalize that, right? What happens is a lot of people learn the basics of vocabulary and grammar on an app like Duolingo, and then as soon as they get into real life conversation, what happens?
They freeze up.
They completely freeze up.
Yeah.
And this is so common for myself, for pretty much anyone that's learning a language can relate to this. And we just kind of took it to first principles, like how do you actually become a confident speaker when you're in a real life situation in a foreign language? You simulate a situation and you allow yourself to practice that. And then we used AI on top of that to give you personalized feedback on your grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, conversation skills, so that you're not just practicing speaking, but you're able to get personalized feedback on top of that.
So, and what if I wanted to now learn French and I have zero French experience, right? Zero French knowledge.
Yeah.
Is it the best tool for that for me?
I would say you want to get the basics in first.
Okay.
We are working on a series of different products that that are coming up that we can't announce just yet.
Cool.
But with that program, we're going to be guiding you from all the way from a beginner to helping you.
So you're filling that gap. So you've started with this main big problem that you felt
Yes.
like you guys could serve, which is like the simulation learning.
Yeah.
And then now you're kind of working backwards to like solve these other lower hanging fruit. Like, okay, let's teach people from the beginning too.
Totally. And this is classic blue ocean strategy, right? Blue ocean versus red ocean.
Let's talk about that. A lot of people haven't heard of this right in this conversation.
Yeah, so blue ocean, it just means that I think the reference was that if you're in a red ocean, this is where all the sharks are, so where all the blood is, and the blue ocean is supposed to be this clear space that feels a little bit safer within the big ocean that you're currently swimming in. And the whole idea of that is when you're entering a market, and most people are going to be entering a market that already exists that's probably a little bit competitive with other players in the market. You want to find a niche that not a lot of people are targeting. And that niche doesn't have to be big initially. The whole idea is that it's so noisy in the world of business and in the market that you're in is you have to be able to stand out somehow. And people are always going to ask you, how are you different from whatever the biggest competitor is? So for us, anytime even now when we speak to customers or people that haven't heard about us, how are you different to Duolingo? And I knew that coming in that we had to position ourselves as the other side of the market, which is a complete focus on immersion. And we weren't even targeting beginners at that time. Not a big market at that time, but it was so untapped that if we were able to dominate that, if we were able to really tap into that, that'll be $100 million business alone. And I think people have to think about that differentiator aspect. Don't try to be better, try to be different. That's the first mentality that I think people should always focus on. And then from there, you can expand into what other people are doing into the bigger market. But at least you have this differentiation of how people think about you as. So positioning is really one of the most important aspects, I think, if you're entering into a business today. And it's going to get even more competitive. So I think this is going to be increasingly more important, is like, how do you position yourself to be different? Because language learning is an incredibly competitive market, even today. So imagine if we were just trying to be a Duolingo competitor, we wouldn't win. We wouldn't have won.
Yeah, it's basically like David and Goliath, right? It's like David and Goliath, you have this story of a giant versus a normal boy, right? And I'll probably butcher this story, but the point is like, if you have this giant, Goliath, and you have David, this little tiny boy, if David tries to go head to head with Goliath at playing Goliath's game, if he tries to use his strengths and try to wrestle Goliath, and maybe tries to like punch Goliath and tries to like even sword fight Goliath, he's going to get squashed. So therefore, he decides to like take a step back. What are my unique differentiators? What are my strengths that Goliath does not have? Got it. Space is my strength.
Yep.
Strength is not my strength. Like literal muscle. Speed is probably on my side.
Yep.
And sure enough, I have this tool in my pocket called a sling. And that helps me utilize my space. And he puts the stone inside of his sling, and he whips this thing around. He's a freaking expert at using a sling. And he whips Goliath in his head. The big giant falls in one stone. This Goliath is this figure of like Duolingo for you in this case, right? And maybe you don't kill Duolingo. That's not your mission.
No.
But the point is like, you're trying to carve out your space.
Yes, we have to stand out.
And they don't have to die for you to live. That's the beautiful thing about business, capitalism and entrepreneurship. There's abundance of success.
In fact, they fuel us. Like the reason why we even exist today is because of how big Duolingo got, right? Because they're feeding us customers in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. But you had to use it from like, you had to use your unique differentiators, which was your sling, of like, okay, got it. We're gonna use this, and we're gonna lean into this and be the best at this.
Yes.
And that's why you've won so far. Won in your definition, and now you're gonna get stronger in other ways too.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think people have to think about what they're uniquely positioned to build that's going to provide them some sort of a competitive advantage. Like if they're just chasing trends because this is what everybody else is doing, but they don't have the experience, the skill sets to be able to actually provide something unique to the market, something uniquely valuable to the market, they're not going to win in the long run, right? So I heard this great analogy from Scott Adams. He's the he's the creator of Dilbert. I don't know if you heard of him.
I haven't, no.
So he has this analogy where he talks about there's two ways to be great in this world. You could be the 0.1% and be great at one thing. So you have the Warren Buffetts of the world, who's the top investor. You have the LeBron James of the world, or the Kobe Bryants, who can become the best basketball player, but that's like 0.0001%. Or you can combine two or three things that you can be the top 10% in the world, which is a lot easier, based on your unique experience, unique skills, and the things that you're willing to learn. It doesn't have to be the skills you have today, and combine those things, where if you were trying to imagine a Venn diagram of 3 things or 4 things, that middle ground where you're combining all of those 3 things is your unique advantage. So for example, like for me, it was, I was uniquely positioned to start a language lab business because there's not a lot of people that were living in Argentina that had access to tutors like I had. So I had a uniquely positioned advantage.
And you experienced the problem in multiple cultures, multiple different regions. Like you understood this problem.
Yep. I had the customer side, which is people that were willing to and had the money to pay for it. They didn't have access to cheap Spanish tutors in Argentina unless they lived there, which is very few people. So I had access to the supply side as well. I had an interest in learning languages just based on my background of learning English at that time, learning French, learning Spanish when I lived there. So I was like deep into what people wanted. And I also had a startup background. I had the marketing expertise to be able to actually get customers at scale and be dangerous enough where I can play around. I wasn't software knowledgeable, but I had enough skills to be able to do it. So I had those three things combined. And think about like how many people actually have that versus if I was trying to be the top 0.1% at a specific field, it's much harder for what I had to do at that time and the skill sets that I had.
What I hear mostly here is your resourcefulness. Like you're using your resources, like your experiences are your resources. You have this experience over here, here, and pretty soon you like this individual resource over here of problem with language, learning language is probably useless by itself. The tech is fairly useful, but it's like kind of like not that useful, by itself. And then where you live, your location, your marketing experience is useful, but not like super useful by itself. But then as soon as you like put all these recipes together, or these ingredients together into a recipe, and all of a sudden you have this thing. And what I'm hearing is like a resourceful entrepreneur that you've always been, and that's the story. I think that's the truth of it. Is you can be thrown into whatever, and you're gonna like find resources around you to use them. And you're gonna make some lemonade out of lemons, right?
Yeah, you have to, right? You know this as a bootstrapped entrepreneur.
Totally, and it's very similar for us with EverBee is like I just pulled from a bunch of different experiences and pulled them into one. Like I had the real estate experience, which is not directly tied to it, but I underwrote probably 1,000, 1,500 deals, on a spreadsheet. So I'm like, okay, I could figure out how to put a business model together. So I understood the numbers of like, okay, what's margins and like how all this stuff. So like I pulled from that, and then like I worked at Qualcomm and Sprinkler, which is software companies, tech companies. So like I had that, like I could pull from that. Oh, I also handled the hiring. I hired like 1,000 people at the companies. Okay, got it. I can like pull from that, and like and then in marketing, I kind of like had these side hustles in e-commerce, so I get to pull from that, and so like mixed it all together. You have a data research company, EverBee at first,
right?
And it'll continue to expand. It'll continue to use our resources, just like you're going to continue to use your resources. And my point with that, sharing that, is for anyone listening to this, you may not know what you are uniquely positioned for in your market or in your world yet, but it is a skill and a thing that you practice, and to look around. What are you kind of good at? What are you gifted at? What do people tell you you're good at? Kind of, or maybe even better question is, what do people ask you for advice on? Often. For me, it was like, advice was how do you build a business? How do you do a marketing funnel? How do you stay positive? Like we all have these little things that we're being asked for from advice from our friends. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's I think like what are the people that people come to you advice for? For me also, it's what comes easy to you that's hard for others. What's like effortless for you? What gives you energy? Where for others it might suck up energy, right? I think we talk a little bit about like kind of like personal branding, podcasting, stuff like that. For some people, it kind of like it's not like the people's favorite things to do. Whereas for me, it's like I love it. Like I love being able to like meet interesting people, all that stuff. That gives me energy. For some people, like marketing is just like like they don't know how to start. They feel like they don't know really how to present their message. They don't think about the psychological aspects of it. Just wasn't their interest. Whereas some people that they love talking about that stuff. I hate spreadsheet stuff, but now we have someone that in our team that just does that all day. That gives them energy. To think about like what comes effortless to you that you're good at also. So combining those two things that people may come to advice for, that's just a hassle for most people. Just that alone, that's your competitive advantage, because in order to win in anything, you have to run a marathon. So if something comes effortless to you, that means you can do it in a sustainable, long-term, and most people are going to stop. Think about the number of podcasts. I think the average podcast per show is like 3 episodes.
Wild.
It's crazy. Like,
so as long as you just exist to 4.
If you just do 4, you're already winning. So that's like what you're competing against. And I think the same thing goes for business. I think the same thing goes for personal branding or money. Like it's whatever you can do and that gives you energy over a long term. And I think that's really important for people to think about.
I completely agree. And it's interesting. It's contrary to what I probably believed at the beginning. Everybody wants to get rich quick. I mean, if we had a choice between like taking longer to get rich and then go shorter to get rich, like you're going to kind of, by default, you're going to choose like, well, what's the fastest path to like whatever that goal is, you know? And that's human nature. It's a mirage. And usually the ones, I love how you said this, but basically the ones who just stick with it for a longer period of time, you're going to, by default, just because you exist, you're probably going to win.
Yes.
Like just because you're in business. And that's why I remember getting this great advice. And it wasn't even to me. I think I watched a video of this years ago, and I still think about it. And the guy was like talking to some kids, and he's just like, dude, sometimes the goal is just like, just stay in business. Just stay in business. Like, don't have to grow, just don't die. And by default, everyone else is going to kind of filter out and kind of like slowly give up around you. Yeah. And you'll just be the one just still standing. Yeah. And by default, you'll have a chance to win. So.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about valuations and talk about exit strategy as well, right? If you think about, if you were to sell a company in terms of what private equity or your acquirers are looking for, just the fact that you stayed in business, your business doesn't have to have grown. Maybe it's grown like 1% or even it stayed flat. But if you have a consistent history, let's say 2, 3, 5 years of that, that's going to give you a higher valuation.
Is that right?
Yeah, just the fact that you stayed in business, people like to see the consistency of that. So that'll give you a higher valuation just for time alone.
No way.
Right. So
I mean, it makes sense. Of course, if I'm buying a business, like I want some time proven. Right.
Because they're going to do, discounted cash flow valuation, and they're going to see how long has that been generating cash for, whatever it might be. So they're going to be able to see from that, there's a history of predictable cash flow or profits in the business. And that will give them the confidence to pay a higher multiple in your business. So yeah, just like that alone, that actually just translates to exit value of your business if you can do that.
Totally. And people listen to this too. It's like, it doesn't always have to be your same business. I mean, ideally it should be like you work on the same thing for 10 years, for example, with Ripe. But sometimes you have to make a move and pivot and like that's where you have to use your best judgment of like pivot into another business. But even the same principle still applies. Just don't give up. It's kind of the idea. Like just keep going, launch another business and then get quicker at it. But eventually you want to get into the same business for like 10 years. You want to build something that's meaningful. Would you agree with that?
For sure, dude. I had doubts all the time. I was like, is this the best business that I should be in? Should I be building a SaaS business? Should I be building this business? That's a whole parallel universe that I won't cross right now, right at this time of my life. So I decided to just focus on one thing. And there was a period of time because of the fact that I was being distracted so much. I had 4 businesses going at one time. I had a e-commerce business, a blue light blocking glass business. I had a business where we were trying to do book summaries, and I had Ripe, and then I was starting Jumpspeak all at the same time. Yeah. And I was doing like consulting, all that stuff as well. So maybe like 5 hustles. None of them were generating revenue.
Is that funny, man?
They were all like either decreasing in revenue. They weren't really, they were all just time suckers, dude. It was the worst.
Dude, that is so funny because my wife is probably like laughing listening to this too, because there was a time where I was like, babe, let's just start this business. Yeah. She's like, you already have 2. I'm like, no, but like, who cares? I could do everything.
Yes.
Like this 10x thinking of like, I can do everything, but it's beautiful. But there's downsides. And how did it make you feel when you had those businesses? I know that you, in hindsight, I understand how what the trade-off was, but how did it make you feel at the time? Did it make you feel important, or did it make you feel successful?
None of those.
Okay.
What it really, if I think about what I was going through psychologically at that time, it was because of fear.
Oh.
Because I had doubts that the business that I was currently in, the main business that I wanted to build, wasn't going to succeed. And that I wasn't the type of person that could build a big business. And I still kind of go through that right now.
Sure we do.
Right? There's different levels to it. And this was my safety haven psychologically and financially to try to diversify my bets so that if this business fails, then at least I have 2 or 3 to rely on. And that's really what it was. It was me being afraid that I might fail. And I had a safety net to go back to. And in the end, none of them worked because of the fact that I had that. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's not the same thing as investing, because when you're investing, it makes sense to diversify your bets because it's a passive thing. It's not going to be something where you have to trade your time to multiply your money. But when you're building a business and you don't have $60 million of funding and it's just bootstrapped and it's mostly you and your co-founder, even if you're not spending time on it, it's being your mental energy is being occupied by that. And you're not giving every single thing to this main business.
Nailed it.
And that's really what the downfall was.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. I almost wonder if it's a rite of passage for everyone to kind of go through this, to like have multiple businesses and multiple products and multiple things, multiple focuses, before they actually realize this. I try to talk to people in a way that's like, don't do that. But I almost wonder if like everyone just has to go through that as fast as possible.
They might, man, because if you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to wonder.
Shiny thing syndrome is a real thing.
Yep.
And then as soon as you can get the discipline to actually put your blinders on one thing, that's where the breakthroughs start to happen.
Yes.
And for us, it was like my wife and I, we had, again, like three businesses, I think at one time, that were all shitty businesses, you know, but we looked kind of legit. We felt maybe a little legit once in a while, like,
sure.
Yeah, we got like 3 businesses, but like all of them were like nothing.
Now, where was that? So for me, it was fear. It was fear of failing in the main business. So I had a backup. What was the psychological trigger for you of starting multiple businesses?
It was this idea, this concept of the average millionaire has 7 sources of income. It's bad advice.
Yeah.
It's bad advice.
Yeah.
I understand where it comes from, but it's poor advice for 95%, 98%, 99% of the world. Yeah. And so it was that mixed with fear. Certainly, you hit on that. I didn't think about that, but it's certainly a lot of fear of just like, well, if this one is not successful, then this one will be. Yeah. And I didn't put enough, I didn't give enough respect to the amount of energy that it takes to actually build a meaningful business. Yes. And so then as soon as I started to realize, the power of focus and manifestation and where focus goes, energy flows, that's when the breakthrough started to happen. And I'm talking breakthroughs, like we're talking millions of just that's the difference. Yeah. Was focus compounding on the same thing over and over and over again. And I got so obsessed with this idea that I'm like, we need to sell everything. I'm talking how, like, we can sell our house. Yeah. We need to go rent. Take all that cash. Let's put it into the business. Double down. Yep. Yes. Oh, we have rental property. Sell it. We have this other house, this other land over here that's like generating some passive income. Sell it. Like if it takes 1 hour of my mental energy a week, month, it's 1 hour that I didn't have that one breakthrough idea in the main business that is going to do the huge exponential quantum leap growth. And that is a next level confidence, I think. Yeah. That I had to go through all of those things in order to reach that point though. But it was a big breakthrough because it was contrary to like, what do you mean you're selling your house? What do you mean you're selling this passive income? Oh, you have another passive income property? That's a dream. Yes. Like, no, sell everything. Yeah. If it's not contributing to this one goal, it needs to be cut out. And that's where meaningful things are built, I believe. Totally. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I think it's easier when you don't have a main business that's generating a lot of revenue or successful to be looking over your shoulders and trying to think about other businesses. Because if you're doing, let's say, a $1 million business and you grow that by 50%, with that scale, it's possible, right? 20%, let's say. So you're generating 200,000 to 500,000 just by focusing on that business. If you were to try to generate 200,000 or 500,000 in a new business, and the amount that it takes, it's pretty fucking hard, right? Versus just staying on the current business. But if you have a business that's only generating $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, and
all of a sudden this starting a new business seems pretty attractive, because even if you focus on this current business and you grow it by 50%, you're not really going to generate more money versus starting a new one that could. So you always have this optimism, grass is greener effect.
Always.
When you're first starting out. So I totally relate to that for anyone that feels that way, because that's pretty much how I felt. The business wasn't generating revenue. So I was like, why don't I try to generate money with this revenue? Now we're getting to the scale where like every incremental improvements that we make in the business, of a current business, based on its size, will have an enormous effect versus trying to spend my energy and time into starting a new business. So yeah, I think it gets hopefully easier for some people as they scale. So I think that's good for people to know that in stage 2 or 3, that becomes easier because, you know, you can just scale that. But in the beginning, it's very tough.
What is JumpSpeak's, whatever you're willing to share, what is the revenue of JumpSpeak today?
Yeah, so we're in the 8 figures. We're in the 8 figures. Yeah, we won't say specific numbers, but we're in the 8 figures. And
for anyone that is doing the zeros right now, math, that means it's 10 million plus.
10 million plus.
And would you consider it annual recurring revenue, or what does it look like for JumpSpeak? Okay.
Yeah, annual recurring revenue.
Annual recurring revenue.
Yeah. And a lot of that is recent. A lot of that is not, I mean, think about when we launched was 3.5, 4 years ago. So yeah, we've kind of scaled that pretty quickly from where we were. And I think a lot of that was the accumulation of the experience and the knowledge that I had in terms of how to scale the business. But yeah, regardless, it is pretty crazy what you can do when you just focus on one thing in a vehicle that compounds, that has the scalability aspect. And we can talk about the forms of leverage that exist in the modern economy and the modern entrepreneurship today. But if you can get there and you can find a business that can scale and you focus on it, there's no limits. You can you can continuously compound that and scale that.
How much do you think about net worth or valuation of your business and businesses?
Yeah, this ebbs and flows, honestly. So we have spoken with investment bankers, and we're in constant conversations with potential acquirers that are interested in the business.
Cool.
And
so sales maybe in your future.
We'll see. Like I love what we're doing now. I love what we're building, and I feel for us we're playing in a $50 billion marketplace, and it's only going to continue to grow as the shift from offline. A lot of that is offline learning, right? So as people shift from offline learning into online learning, the online learning app market is only going to skyrocket, even if the market stays the same. So there's so much room for us to grow. And I think we're in this interesting time where we're riding this wave of AI that we're now starting to play with some pretty crazy stuff where the idea of the original vision that I had of making immersion learning accessible is going to come to fruition to a scale that didn't even exist 2 years ago.
Yeah, you have like AI people you can literally have conversations with about any subject. It's going to be really special.
It's wild, right? And this is like for the particular niche of language learning especially, it's just such a good fit for using and leveraging AI for good, for education, for connecting people. And yeah, it's a really interesting place.
In your conversations that you've had with investment bankers, you get to learn a lot in these conversations.
Yeah.
Particularly about multiples and valuations of companies.
Yeah.
What is the valuation multiple on a company like JumpSpeak, Duolingo, these companies that are like that? Like, for listeners, the multiple is like, there's different multiples depending on the business. Sometimes it's an EBITDA multiple.
Yeah.
On profit, like what is the multiple? Like that's the, time, make $100,000 in profit times 3x of that profit is a $300,000 valuation of the business. You could sell that company for $300,000. For apps and software, typically the multiple is different, and it's usually based on annual recurring revenue. And it's usually a higher multiple, and that depends on the revenue scalability and the size. what have you been seeing, or what do you talk about with these bankers?
Yeah, so there's different answers to that. There's a public valuation of, let's say, a company like Duolingo, and then there is private valuations that you would get from strategic acquirers or private equity. So generally, a public company like Duolingo, they'll get a higher valuation. So I don't like to use public companies as a reference point.
What do they get though? They're public, right?
They would probably get like 8 to 10x revenue.
Cool.
For that size, right? For private companies, I would usually use public data of other companies that have been bought.
Okay.
So, for example, I think one of our competitors, they were bought by a big strategic company. They were doing about 10, 11 million, and I think they were bought by 120 million. So it's about a 10x revenue. So there's multiple companies that I think you can use to reference that point.
That checks out on everything that I've read. Like as soon as in software or recurring revenue plays, particularly tech-enabled, is like so it's 0 to 10 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. You're typically valued at like a 5x to 7x multiple.
Yeah.
So that company, but as soon as you flip that to the 10 million ARR, it kind of starts to turning into 10x multiple. Is that kind of what you've seen also?
Yeah. So I think B2B SaaS also is a little bit different than B2C or B2C SaaS.
Okay.
We're kind of in between because we're B2C SaaS. Okay. But for, let's say,
is that in a better way or a worse way?
Worse way. Okay. Yeah. Because B2B has stickier, generally, retention.
That makes sense.
For B2C, let's say e-commerce stores or people that are selling digital courses, whatever it might be, generally it's going to be based on EBITDA. It's not going to be based on recurring revenue because sometimes they don't have recurring revenue. So that's a good kind of distinguishing point that for people to know. The interesting thing is as you get into higher multiples of EBITDA, higher millions of EBITDA, you're going to have a higher multiple. So it's kind of the opposite of what most people think about when they buy wholesale. So if you're trying to buy a bunch of toothpaste or toilet paper, you're going to get a discount because you're going to buy a bunch of stuff. In the world of buying or selling your business, the bigger you are, the bigger the multiple that you get. Why is that? Well, it's because generally the bigger company will have a team of people that are in high leadership positions so that it's not necessarily reliant on you. It's been established. There's a product market fit. There's customers that want it. So the risk for someone to be able to get their money back is a lot lower. So they're willing to justify paying a higher multiple for that. So usually from a multiple perspective, if you hit around 5 million or higher, initially it's around 2 million or 3 million, you attract a new pool of buyers. If you're 5 million EBITDA or higher, you attract even a bigger pool. This is really when private equity starts to come into play.
We're talking about EBITDA here, not revenue.
EBITDA.
Okay.
Yeah. You could also use that for SaaS as well, but maybe for SaaS it's going to be around 10 million ARR. That's when you can start to attract private equity players. And that's really where the multiples get even higher. You could probably put a 20 to 50% bump on the multiple that you would get because number one, you attract a higher pool of buyers, and that would create a competitive bidding process. And people will start to bid up.
So are you guys do you think that most of your valuation will come from EBITDA or it'll come from recurring revenue?
It's hard to say, man. The way it would likely work when we're going to sell a business is we would put our numbers up and we wouldn't put a price on it. So the way we would go into market when we're working with investment bankers is we would put together our whole numbers, our business, our strategy, our growth, and we would allow people to bid for whatever they think the business is worth. And that's kind of a negotiation play in
but
general.
You haven't done that yet.
We have not done that yet.
Gotcha. What do you see? And I kind of want to like put a bow on this thing for anyone wondering this. So you talked about like the physical product business, the course creator business, it's based on EBITDA. Software traditionally is based on revenue because there's more margin and stuff you can levers you can pull after they acquire the business, and they can make it profitable very quickly. So that's why it's not really fair to do it off profit necessarily. Always in SaaS, like they can use a combination of things.
Yes.
But I mean, if we're talking 8 figures, I think it's comfortable to say that it's 8 figures times 8 to 10 is the valuation of what you've built. And that's a special thing, man. And just to be really clear on this, we just said that you had 10 million in ARR plus of revenue. Just to be very clear, times 8 or 10, whatever it is, we're talking $80 to $100 million of a enterprise value of something that you built in 4 years.
Yeah, I don't really think about it, to be honest with you.
You don't?
Yeah, I don't really think about it.
Now you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel now?
Now we're thinking about it. To be honest, I feel the same. I don't really overthink about it until if something was to happen.
Because it's real. It's not real. Yeah, it's on paper, and this is paper money.
Yeah, this is paper money, but also I think part of it is I'm the same person. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of just the fact that all of a sudden if I have 80 to 100 million, I don't think I'm going to really feel that much different about myself because I'm already good with who I am. And I think a lot of it is just kind of betting on yourself. So if we did have an exit, like that would definitely be life-changing for me.
No question.
For sure.
And also everybody around you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the idea of calling yourself a $100 million CEO, all that stuff is great for credibility. But I'm just every day still working, man. It's
yeah, no matter what you're in.
If we were to sell the company, I would be back to work the next day, building something new or whatever it might be. So yeah, do I want to sell the company? Perhaps one day, but I'm not really thinking about it too much, I guess. It's interesting that you brought that up because I really haven't thought about like what it would be, because even if we were to go to the market, I didn't want to set the expectation only to have it lowered perhaps if we were to sell the company. So I just thought about what's actually a business that's potentially sellable, that's a great business. And if we go to market, that's what it is.
I think it's an important conversation to have, even because you're such a humble person. And you answered that exactly how I'd expect you to answer, which is like, I'm still the same person. I'm a human being, and I'm not going to change a whole lot just because I'm liquid $80 million to $100 million. Probably more than that, by the way, because you said plus 8 figures. But the truth is, you're such a good person, and when good people have more resources, they tend to be better people, even better people. And it's a special thing. And people listening to this right now, we're talking about building businesses and creating a life of freedom and financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom, all these things.
Yeah.
And when they hear that of like, wow, I didn't even realize that was an option. And I didn't even know that was an opportunity to build a business from 4 years and be worth $80 to $200 million. And if it keeps growing, like this is how companies are built. This is how like life-changing generational wealth is built through one business. And I think it's important to almost not be so humble in situations like this sometimes too, and be like, dude, you guys can do this.
Yes.
It's hard work. We're not talking about you doing easy things here. No one said anything about easy, but it could be really worth it.
Yeah.
To really get good at something like this.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. Especially if you're playing in a world where you have infinite scalability. I think like leverage is something worth talking about. Like I think Noel Ravikant talks about this, where you have kind of the bottom layers of leverage, which is trading your time for money without any tools. And then you have tools that allows you to do that in a more efficient manner. That's one level up. And then from there, you're managing labor, which is kind of the oldest form of leverage that we had. The next level up from that is you're managing capital, which is also kind of old. You have still venture capitalists, you have people that were investing money, and money can compound. And then you have the newest form of leverage, which is probably one of the best ones that you can get, which is code and media. So that's what we're doing, right? We have social media, podcasting, YouTube. That's infinite scalability, zero cost of reproduction, and you can reach a global audience. Same thing with code. One person can write a great piece of code and they can reach millions of people, billions of people without needing to trade your time for money.
Yeah, the cost of goods sold is...
Cost of goods sold. And it's especially powerful if you can combine those two forms of leverage that we have today, and combine that with capital and combine that with leverage. So I think people listening, I think the first basis is that you have to get into a business that has a lot of leverage, so that you have the motivation that when you go all in on that business, that can skyrocket from 0 to $1 million to 10 million to 100 million. And you don't have to be tempted to look across, because that one business, as long as it's a scalable form of business, can scale to the moon. Same thing with podcasts, right? Like, in general, I don't like to get into mediums that doesn't have infinite scalability. So the only two things that I'm really working on are software businesses, infinite scalability, mixed with content, and my podcast, which is also infinitely scalable. And I think if people can just focus on that first and figure out what that is, that'll also give them the motivation to go all in.
It's really cool.
Knowing that there's no glass ceiling.
You could start thinking about 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out.
Yes.
This is like, how do I make my first $10,000 online?
Yes.
Which is, both problems need to be solved, but it's more like, yeah, I get that. And fortunately, a lot of people listening to this, they sell print on demand products. Like, they're getting into the print on demand business, or maybe they already are in the print on demand. Pretty scalable. But there's next level layers above that.
Yep.
Digital products, selling templates, things. Okay, that's great. That's great leverage. But there is another one. It's a recurring aspect of digital product selling. That's next level.
Yes.
And then if you layer on this media aspect of leverage, it can really start to fuel everything.
Totally.
And it's interesting. We haven't talked about your podcast at all, and I'm disappointed in that. Not just because we're running out of time, but I do want to get into the rapid fire, and hopefully we can kind of touch on it a little bit.
Oh, there's a rapid fire. Okay.
There is, yeah, and we're not going to get through all of them, so I'll kind of jump to the main ones that I really want to ask about.
Cool.
If your family and your friends and your coworkers and your team and just people that care about you, if they all had to get into a room without you, and their task was to write a book or a blog article or some big piece of content characterizing your true traits from their perspective, what do you think they'd say?
These are personality traits or just overall, like,
how would they describe you?
My mom would probably describe me as a black sheep of the family. Someone that's always been creating his own path and doing something that's not conventionally normal, and willing to have the courage to do that. And I think a lot of my friends would say that as well. Someone that has, this is weird, like talking about myself, if I'm being honest with you.
It's supposed to be weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess someone that is trying to provide value in every interaction, someone that's willing to listen, someone that's willing to, provide value at the end of the day.
Any negatives?
Where do we start? I think probably that I can be in my own world a lot of the times, and that comes with sometimes not being as responsive when it comes to texting or staying in touch. I'm kind of focusing on my own world, and I generally have a brick wall that I put up for most people, unless you're in the circle. And from there, I can be a lot more vulnerable. But most people that don't really know me will kind of think that I'm kind of putting this distance from me to them. It served me, but it's also not served me in some ways.
Thank you for that. How would you define a creator?
A creator for me is someone who has the freedom to express their unique value and expression and put it to something that's tangible, whether that's an art piece, whether that is a conversation, whether that is a media, whether that's a piece of software, something that allows you to be uniquely human, uniquely yourself, and put that into something that's tangible for the world.
Do you think everyone should be a business owner?
No, I don't think so. I think we talked a lot about the positive sides of being a business owner, but I think if you're wondering whether you should be a business owner or whether you should start being an entrepreneur, it's already a hard path for you. Because even if you're craving and dying to create something new, and this is like the only thing you can ever think about doing in your life, it's already so hard. And if you already have doubts, if you already have thoughts about your safety net, about how you're going to think about the risks, it's hard. And I think for certain people, it's great to have a 9-to-5 job. I don't think we can be business owners if we didn't have people that were comfortable with 9-to-5 jobs. I just don't think people have the same mindset. I think entrepreneurs are a little bit crazy. Like every successful entrepreneur that I know is a little bit weird. It has a little bit of that X factor to them.
Not delusional.
A little bit delusional,
yeah.
Right? Like Steve Jobs talked about how he would have never started Apple if he wasn't so delusional, how he wasn't so naive. When most people think about the business that they start and how hard it is, they wouldn't have been so keen of starting if they thought about all the lawsuits that they were going to get, the software projects that were going to go down, the employees that were going to, betray you. It's a war field out there, man, and you're taking all of the risks if you're an entrepreneur. So if you're not willing to do that and put all of your eggs into one basket, it may not be for you, and that's just blunt advice.
We didn't talk about your podcast, that you're doing literally incredible work with the people that you bring on, the experts that you bring onto your podcast, called Growth Minds. Where can people find you, learn more about you, follow your journey, all that good stuff?
Yeah. They can just search up Growth Minds on Spotify, YouTube. They can search my name, Sean Kim, on YouTube. And listen to a few of the episodes there. It's about health, wealth, and love. And I bring on experts on a weekly basis, whether it's authors, entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders that can help you in one of those fields. And the reason why I chose those fields were, I think these are really the 3 core pillars of what makes a great life. But none of these were taught in school, in the traditional education. None of us were taught how to eat properly, how to eat well that gives you energy. None of us were really taught how to make money and be entrepreneurs and create value. And none of us were really taught how to maintain relationships, how to communicate with your partner, how to love yourself. And that's been a journey that I go through from the beginning. So this is almost a selfish thing that I do, where I can talk to people, but also provide value by sharing that knowledge to everyone else.
Sean, thank you for coming on, man.
Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate your friendship, man. Thank you.
My brother.